I want to take you through a tour of video games you've never seen before. You know, this doesn't, the faceplate fell off, but you've seen one of these. This is one of them Game Boys you've heard so much about.
Oh yeah,
chunky
I
boy.
did a video about the Game Boy.
And you're working on a Wii one right now.
I'm working on my Wii.
A Wii one. I took from, you know, this is my wife's Game Boy Color. I
Wow.
inherited Super Mario Brothers Deluxe, Tetris, Super Mario Land, and Paperboy from her. And Paperboy is her game. The only game she can play, it would seem.
Tetris was Anna's, so yeah, I inherited her Game Boy Pocket that she had when she was a child. She had that Tetris and Super Mario Land.
There are some Game Boy games that are just straight up like, that's pretty much exactly what the NES game is. Like, it's a very good port of the NES game. The Game Boy game doesn't require what the NES game had. So, like, Paperboy, Tetris, like Felix the Cat is another one that, like, it's pretty much the same game. Occasional games that are better than their NES successors, like Balloon Kid is better than Balloon Fighter, in my opinion.
Yeah, Mega Man 5 is its own game completely, and it's actually, yeah, I think, better than a lot of the NES Mega Mans.
We've been emulating retro games for, like, decades. It's not hard to play one of your favorite games from childhood. This is not a challenge.
We're literally swimming in that.
I'll always remember like those early like Nestopia, Nesticle.
That was black magic, wasn't it?
It was insane.
I couldn't even believe it. I had my Gateway 2000, and I was like, I had an SNES emulator, and SNES was still kind of still alive, and I was like, this is cheating. Like, I can just play this game on my computer and an emulator. It's crazy.
We understood the value of $1 based on the cost of a video game, right? Getting the next video game was one of the most exciting things in our lives. And a video game was $50. And so then we were like, okay, so then how many birthdays and Christmases before I can personally purchase my own video game? We coveted these things. And then one day in around 1999, you could just have them all. It was very strange.
Yeah, it was nuts. Yeah, especially like, yeah, the Game Boy, NES, and Super Nintendo, you could like do amazingly instantly.
Yeah.
And you had access to every single thing. It's like, whoa.
I played like Pokemon Blue on the computer. All my friends were talking about Pokemon. I wasn't likely to get it for Game Boy. It was a late era Game Boy game, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. I remember Pokemon Gold and Silver weren't yet out yet, but it was out in Japan. So I downloaded the Pokemon like Gold Japanese version. I'm like, I'm playing this before it's even out.
I remember feeling like I was cheating for sure. Retro Game Core, Russ, he pops up and he ends up becoming like the ambassador for all Chinese handhelds. And there became this cottage industry from Anbernic and Retroid. And of course, the Steam Deck came along eventually. And Russ would be our guide through most of them. Like, he'll do like a roundup, like best handheld devices of 2023 or something. And I'm like, look at all those fucking little Game Boys he's got. And I'm like, where do you store all your Game Boys, Russ?
And he literally is a guide, because he'll be making guides. You can go online and you can look up every step. And yeah, and he's always so like thorough. And when he does these roundups, he's categorizing things by like price and form factor, and he's doing like case studies where he's like, if you're this kind of player, this is what I would think you would use, and if you're this kind of player, maybe this would be good. It's like, it's amazing. He's very good at it. It's like his calling in life, and you can tell. They call him like the Bob Ross of retro game handhelds.
But before Russ, I was in the mood to play retro games in a handheld form. And you might say, well, why not a PSP? Well, I don't have a PSP. Well, why not an R4 card and a DS? Well, I did do that for a long time. Everybody was saying, like, you're going to want one of these GPD XDs. And, you know, I have Sonic Advance going right there. You can see a nice big screen. It's got twin control sticks.
I can't tell. Are they like the slider kind, or are they?
No,
like...
but they're almost, like, they're nubby. They're pretty small. They have a lot of travel, actually. They're very smooth. They're weird. They don't have a grip on them the way that like the Switch one does. Big screen, in some ways too big for the resolution on some, you know, I remember at the time buying it because I was like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have a really high resolution screen? This is a $200 device. I made a big video about it. I think I titled it something like the best way to play video games. And I was just plain wrong, because this runs Android. I played like a ton of Rogue Squadron and like Shadows of the Empire. Like N64 emulates beautifully. You know, that's to be expected on these kind of like higher power, like Android based systems, right? Of course, you can play YouTube on it and you can play Android games on it too with, you know, a nice, but this is pretty weak right here. Look at this shitty hinge.
That was a problem with the original DS too, that cracked hinges and yeah. But that looks extra bad. GBD is still going strong. They make like handheld PCs in that form factor, like they you know the kind of stuff that the ROG Ally does, and they have like external GPUs they've been doing, and so they're still in the business. They're still pretty good.
And you know what? It's pretty this will be relevant later. When I close it, it goes to sleep pretty reliably. But it doesn't really, you know, like if I look, it's not going to stay shut if I just stop open. It's got a mini HDMI. That's kind of nice. It's, of course, supports Bluetooth. Of course, it can get online. You know, this is a $200 device. This has gone more into the mini computer product line, wouldn't you say? Like your ROG Ally. And I never really loved that it wasn't consoleized, that it wasn't just like a purpose-built firmware.
Yeah, you can't really beat the like kind of the emulation station front ends and the Emulex and the Bataceras. Those kind of things just feel like a console and feel like you just turn it on, you're running through menus, you're picking games. It's so snappy.
And I remember Russ made a video in 2022 or something that was like, you know, right now, and this is before he would review another 2,000 devices. He was like, I think the RG355P is kind of my go-to device when I just want to play some NES or something like that. This is the P for plastic. There'd be an M, then there'd be a PM. So M is for metal. So there were nicer builds of this, and then they made a 4x3 version of this. This version is special, in my opinion. I'm going to take this 3D printed thing off that I always buy. A 3:2 aspect ratio. There's Sonic Advance again for posterity, for comparison. This is kind of like purpose-built for GBA.
Yeah, 3.2 is not bad, I think, for a lot of emulation. It kind of is the sweet spot between 16.9 and 4.3.
Yeah, and keeping the screen small kind of keeps the image looking high quality. Like it looks good. NES, Genesis, anything that like you're conforming the image. You do have to go into the RetroArch settings, and you do have to mess with like integer scaling and the bilinear nomenclature.
I am adding virtual particle trajectories.
Some of the blur stuff, like you do have to mess with it. It is not, nor are any of these, like buy it and play it type devices. You do have to kind of walk with Russ.
You have to walk with him on the beach, and sometimes he carries you.
It's like that bookmark, you know? I was with you when you didn't even know it. I'll say too, the build feels kind of nice. This is a little small in my hands, and I have small hands, and this feels a little small in my hands. So it doesn't feel quite right. It's got USB-C. It does not come with Wi-Fi, but you can connect a USB-C Wi-Fi adapter if you'd like. You buy this little 3D printed thing off of Etsy that somebody makes, and now you've got yourself like something where your thumb can comfortably sit on the control stick. And
that's pretty great.
And that's been really, really nice. So, and I played through like all of Mario 64 like that on this system. This is the first one where like I beat a ton of games I hadn't beaten before. I played a ton of games I hadn't played before. Got a headphone jack as well. There's a dial for volume. I don't know if you prefer a rocker or a dial, but this you have to take your fingernail actually, EJ, and to turn it up and down. Yeah. Oh, weird.
Crack my weak fingernails on the thing.
The power button's on the left and the audio's on the right. I don't know if we care about this sort of thing. Most other systems I've noticed power on the right, volume on the left. This was like $90 at the time on Amazon, I think it was. It shipped with Emulation or something, and I just flashed the whole thing. And I don't know if I'd recommend that somebody buy this and then just use the sketchy Chinese emulator and sketchy Chinese ROMs. It does not do N64. It does not do Dreamcast. I mean, it tries, but not really. You do like a little bit of a Thomas Wave, that Dolphin Blue game. I think I've played like Wave Race, or Star Fox. There's a couple games that normally emulate pretty well. So I dropped it one time and it cracked and I got sad. And I said, I'm going to buy a new one and I'm going to buy another one of Russ's devices. And this is in the exact same family of devices. And you've seen me talk about this on the show before. Wood grain. This is the RG351V, V for vertical. Spoilers, this is my favorite emulation device that I own, that I've played. It's got everything I need, and it looks a lot like it's interesting. Actually, it is. It's a little thinner than the original Game Boy.
Like the wood grain, like when I saw that in person, you brought it to one of the Box Max shoots. It's like the wood grain's kind of fun. I don't know. There's something fun about it.
It's got the slanted start and select same way. It does have an analog stick. So if you care about, if that's important, not twin ones. And I actually really like the way L1 and L2, etc. are handled here. The screen is nice and big. So there's Sonic Advance again. The buttons feel like an SNES controller, man. They feel good. So what do I mean by that? It's not a clickety click.
Yeah, I like a little give like the Super Nintendo controller. Like the ROG Ally in my estimation is a little bit too soft, like slightly too soft.
Like every firmware, right? Like hold start and tap select to go back to the menu. I'm running ArcOS. It's my firmware of choice that you can run on this particular line of products. If you hold the R2, you can quickly thumb through your ROMs, right? This actually does go on the internet and can scrub box art, and you can do the retro achievement thing if you care about that. I'm not really sure I've ever done it. I have two complaints. One is that kind of the responsiveness sometimes from the power. Like if I tap so that was responsive. Now we got to wait. If we want to turn it back on, we can't just try right away again. Now let's try it. There we go. Yeah, all right. That's fine. And also the volume is sometimes a little bit unresponsive. Like if I wake it up and suddenly it's playing music, I have to quickly try to turn it down, and it doesn't always register that I'm trying to turn it down. So it's a little janky at times. Like right now, for instance, just by putting it to sleep and turning it back on, it's locked up. And what I find is after 7 or 8 or 9 months, it starts to act kind of crappy and slow performance. The boot time gets much slower, and you have to flash it and start all over again, and then everything's great for a while. There is this elusive, hey, but could I get one that's perfect, one that never has problems? Does that exist? So Russ puts up a video. And after all these years, he puts up a video, and the video says, "This might be the one."
He sucks you back in.
It sucks me back in. So do you remember this particular product?
Oh, it's beautiful. What a feat of engineering that was.
This is the Game Boy Advance SP. It's got your power port here. It's got that link cable, which also was like an adapter for the headphone port.
Yeah, I had that adapter, and yeah, you put the headphones in. You heard so much noise. You hear the music, but there was a layer of underground noise to it too. So it wasn't very pleasant.
Cute story. I left my Game Boy Advance SP in an airport when I was traveling in my freshman year of college. I was really bummed. I lost it and Super Mario World, Super Mario Advance 2 or whatever the hell it is. For Valentine's Day the next year, Nina bought me a new SP. She shows up to my college apartment with a new SP.
Wow.
This is that one. So thank you, Nina. You've made my problem go away. It's got an LNR right here. No L1 or L2 or R2. And it's just got the 2 buttons. I always was kind of charmed by the 2 buttons. I was like, nice. We're going to have kind of an NES experience here.
Most importantly, a backlit screen, right?
Holy shit.
People didn't realize that the Game Boy Advance didn't have a backlit screen. Obviously, the Game Boy didn't have a backlit screen. Traveling in a car and the light starts to, even if it's really bright out, sometimes it's a little strange. But then when the light starts to go down, you're fighting with street lamps, or maybe even the car behind you's headlights. You'd hold up the Game Boy a little bit just so you could see.
I guess Father wouldn't mind me turning on one of these car lights.
Turn off the light, I can't see!
Yes, Father!
This solved all of those problems. It was amazing. I know we had the Game Gear. I had a Game Gear, actually.
But that had problems with the light too, didn't it? That wasn't really backlit.
One, it was just the battery life was 2 seconds, so that was a problem. You're throwing away 6 batteries all the time. And yeah, it was too bright, actually.
I remember Mark sent us a copy of The Ring on GBA, so that's what's playing on here at the moment. It's really, really dark. And I remember thinking no, man, this solves the problem. I can see the game. And it was I think the consistency, the fact that you could be in sunlight, you could be at nighttime, whatever, and it had really good battery life, as I recall too. A huge step up in portable gaming, this particular. Now I know some people really like the horizontal GBA, but that wasn't backlit. If you're a big Game Boy fan, that was the ultimate experience for Game Boy. Yeah, okay, so Russ goes, this might be the one. And he presents something that looks awfully familiar.
You madman.
Here, let's do a little comparison.
So
It might not be
it's a little
obvious
bit
on
thicker,
camera.
a little bit bigger.
It's a little chunkier. It's a little taller. Now, let's compare screen size, shall we? The screen size is considerable, quite considerable.
Yeah, side by side, it's considerable. And that's a 4:3 screen. That's a 4:3 screen.
It's 4:3. Yep. So you're not going to get that native GBA-ness, even though this feels like it's like a GBA game first and foremost, right? 4 buttons instead of 2. This is the RG35XXSP. So they maintain the SP thing. Look at that, Capcom. Come on, tell me you don't want to start playing video games.
Oh yeah, anytime Capcom in that era, geez.
You're ready. So it's got the same layout, with the exception of the 4 buttons. It's got the start and select right where they used to be. This is a home button instead of a brightness button because you don't need no brightness button. You use software for brightness these days. It's got power over here you can tap, and it's got a volume rocker here. It's got mini HDMI, and it's got USB for charging. And it's got 2 SD card slots, and it's got a headphone jack. But it ships with a proprietary Anbernic. This is an Anbernic device. It ships with their proprietary firmware. I think they're pushing their own firmware now. I started getting bombed by 10 tips for the RG35XXSP. And I learned that this is the new hotness. I think the chip architecture is slightly better than this other line that I've been messing with.
Yeah.
Slightly. And I have noticed that like Dreamcast works fine on here. There's no control stick.
Now I've noticed that as you're touching those buttons, I hear a lot of clacking.
Well, this is not the one. Russ.
Sorry, kid.
When your wife's sleeping, do you want to bring that thing out and start clacking away?
I'm sitting there at nighttime doing this. There's other models of this. There's one that kind of sort of looks like has like an NES feel to it, like with like purple buttons and like an off-white. I like the silver one. A lot of people had silver like Game Boy SPs. So I wanted one that would be mistaken for a Game Boy SP.
Yes.
Where somebody just thinks that that's what I'm playing. So there's this thing called Game Room, and you're immediately instructed by all of YouTube to ignore it. There's nothing but bad emulation here. Prepackaged crap. Then there's RetroArch, and that's actually where you can find all your consoles, and that's where you should start playing. And it did ship with a lot of ROMs. It did not ship with Pokemon or Mario games.
They don't want to get the ire of Nintendo, but they're fine to rip off other people.
They're like, well, but Mega Man's fucked.
Capcom ain't doing shit.
In the RetroArch settings, by default, it's got a lot of shaders and bezels enabled. It's got like a Famicom bezel because it's like the emulator they put on there was Famicom and not NES. It's got like a Genesis one that it says like MD for Mega Drive. I'm not a Mega Drive guy. I don't hail the Queen. Genesis. So there's like a Sega logo at the top and like MD at the bottom. Like, get this shit out of here. The only one that I liked was for Game Boy SP, Game Boy Advance SP. Because it's 3.2 and not 4.3, they aligned it to the top of the screen, and then they put a footer that says like Game Boy Advance SP, like you have on the actual device.
It's like nice. So it kind of replaces that logo.
Yeah, that's kind of nice. But the shaders look weird. Some of the color looks strange. You go into the settings, you just turn it all off, and then everything's great. But man, that clicking. And if you think, look, this is the right. Yeah. That's for just regular old buttons. Check out the start button.
Oh, that's even louder.
It is even louder.
It's like significantly louder.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so like the occasional game where I have to use a start button, I'm like in Batman for NES, you start to change the weapon. Dun 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 dun, click 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 click, dun 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 dun. Russ goes, yeah, this is the one, but it's only the one if you disassemble the whole thing with all of its bits falling out, all the buttons falling out of the faceplate and everything.
Its ass hanging out. You
put layers of gaff tape on all of the contacts to shut them the fuck up. I might do it, and I actually tried to do it before the pod tonight. I thought maybe I could review that piece of it. It required some like 1.5 like hex screwdriver that I don't have, and I was like, maybe I'm not doing this. I went back to that wood grain one, and I was like, I like this wood grain one better. I really love the clamshell. I do. I love the clamshell thing. But that clicking is just obnoxious, and there's no excuse for it. I don't understand it.
The old Game Boy SP is kind of like that, right? It's got like those micro switch buttons, but that sounds louder, I think.
Let's do a test, shall we? So this is the original. Quiet.
It does have a click to your thumb, but yeah, I don't hear it.
Everybody was like, "You're really gonna like how." PSP is playing currently. PSP doesn't play that great either. DS does. So if like you wanted to play a single screen game like of Mario Kart DS or New Super Mario Brothers or something like that, it's like playing a DS game like a Game Boy SP game. I kind of like it. You're supposed to be able to shut it, and it's supposed to go to sleep, but did it?
Oh. It sort of did.
Sometimes it does.
But it did it late. It was like you were opening it up and it turned on.
People online are like, no, shut it slow, because there's like some magnet that causes it. Like right now, it's not asleep. You can tap the power button and nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
Nothing happens. I guess, so sometimes it doesn't, and you hold it and then you power it off. Now I've powered it off.
No.
This is $65. If you pay for it on Anbernic's website, you know, if you didn't have one, sure, why not? It's great. And I will say the build quality is nice. It feels good in my hands. The hinge is not a problem. The hinge seems to be all right.
Yeah, we'll see what time will tell. You never know.
I'll hold out for that tape mod. Maybe that will help. There is no such thing as not messing a lot with these when they come in.
I kind of draw the line at like those kind of hardware mods. When you buy those things, like I don't want to be like unscrewing them and taping shit.
And that's you talking, who will mod anything.
Yeah, but that's different. It's different. It's a CRT. I put a headphone jack on this one.
So when you play portable retro games, because you own, there was that little teeny one you bought. Now there's your ROG Ally. There's the analog pocket. So you've got like three. Yeah, what are you playing on? What's EJ doing? Does he just walk around with a CRT strapped to his neck?
The one I have is this Anbernic, which is the what is it? The RG355XXSP, which is actually is actually like this has actually really nice buttons. Now you also need shaders to make it look correct. Because it's a 4:3 screen, but it's like 480p. But most of these games played in like, was it 240p or 240? I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't look quite like NES doesn't look quite right on it. The problem is it's just too small. And I also have the analog pocket here. I think the screen on this is really nice. But I also find like if I want to play GBA, it's so letterboxed. And
that's supposed to be a GBA machine.
But yeah, no, I'll play it on this, or I'll play it on this, right here.
Well, the ROG Ally is pretty appealing. Like I do feel like maybe there's a missing thing like that in my life for GameCube and for PC ports for playing like some PC games.
Well, for me now is that a lot of times when I'm playing games, and this is like so pathetic, but I want to be making content, so I have OBS on here. So if I'm playing an emulator, I'll load up OBS and I'll capture some footage while I play. It's easy peasy. I might even sell my analog pocket. I don't play it, and I might sell this Anbernic device because I don't play it, because I find myself again wanting to play on a CRT because it looks great, or if I'm capturing footage this.
Like I said, I've said this on the show before, but when I had like a hankering to try Batman for Genesis recently. I was like, okay, Sega Lord X always talks it up. Let me try it again. And I'm like, well, you could play it on your portable, or you could go in the other room and play it on that nice CRT. I almost always choose that nice CRT. And especially for Genesis games, that 8-bit DOE 6-button calls me.
Oh.
Because it's just so talk about nice controls. I think that might be my favorite controller in existence. Is the M80 or whatever.
What M30 or whatever it is. Yeah,
I love that thing.
That's the thing, is like all those 8-bit DOE controllers are all just a dream.
Yeah.
Even I have one for the Super Nintendo that plugs in with a dongle. Yeah, you want to use those. Controllers
matter, man. Like I don't know about you. Like whenever I have a new device like that, I'm like, all right, let's do level 1-1 of Mario 3 and see how it feels. And and like if I'm getting damage from Goombas. I'm like, this thing sucks.
Yeah, there's actually, the lag is, if the lag is wrong or if the buttons have accidental ups and downs, it's not right.
I was showing Keith the new system. I went to a John cookout, and I was like, the kid and I, Gloria more than ever is into Pokemon. We just bought some cards, and we've been playing Pokemon Go, and is like a lifelong Pokemon fan. And I said, we've actually been playing Silver on Game Boy Color. And he goes, Silver's good. Silver's good.
Silver's good.
He goes, I'll always remember, we were driving back from Boston. I was in Aaron's car, and there was a group of us, like 3 of us, and we were all asleep in the car late at night. And I woke up groggily, and Aaron was driving, and I noticed that he was playing Game Boy Color. He was playing Pokemon Silver while not paying attention to the road.
Oh, no.
And I just went back to sleep.
You saw him like drinking a bottle of whiskey. He's swerving around. You're like, he's fine.
Aaron's always been a chaos agent. So that's my little emulation story. I was excited to tell you that.
Subscribe to Red Cow Entertainment on Patreon for full episodes every other week.